Now, a lot of people are probably going to look at our list and they're going to lose their mind because they are currently acting as prisoners of the moment. Hello and welcome in. It is always college football. We are so happy that you're here with us today. Why? Because we're putting a bow on the first month of the season. And yes, if you want to get technical, there were a handful of games, quite a few, that were played in August, but we're going to include August for this exercise in our September superlatives episode. A lot of conclusions that have been drawn. And frankly, I think a lot of conclusions are a bit premature on whether or not teams are dead, buried, and gone, or teams that are going to go on to win the national championship. It's still very early. Teams are still very much a work in progress. We've had injuries that have affected rankings. We've had injuries that have affected outcomes. Maybe guys get healthy, they get better, the teams improve, what have you. Maybe teams started hot and they fall off a cliff. So everything right now is very much up in the air. But there have been some conclusions drawn just from my evaluation of some of these teams, watching the tape of some of these players. We have gone through and we have looked at some of our preseason rankings. We looked at our top defenses. We looked at our top quarterbacks. We decided to kind of revisit those and give you a new top 10. And some of the teams that might not look quite as good as we thought they were going to look in the preseason, where they're slotted now, or if they're slotted at all. We also were pretty good on a few things too. We will pat ourselves on the back to an extent, but not really, because to be honest with you, the quarterback list that we put together in the preseason is a disaster. So we're going to reassess. We're going to start from scratch. We're going to take a snapshot of how the season is unfolding before us. We're also going to give out the all transfer team here in September. A lot of guys playing in new places that have been outstanding here in the first month of the season. We'll give you our biggest surprises. We'll also give you our biggest disappointments. So normally on a show like today, we'll have a conversation. We're not going to do that today. We're going to go through and give you some rankings, give you some lists, and give you some things to chew on. And I'm sure, because we're doing rankings, I'm sure you'll have a very strong reaction. Before we get into it, I want to continue to encourage all of you guys to go on the podcast platform of your choosing. Doesn't matter which one, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Go and subscribe to the podcast. Okay, I cannot emphasize that enough. The podcast numbers are through the roof, and yet we've noticed from our deep dive analytics, a lot of the people that download the podcast aren't even subscribed. So go and make sure that you are. That would be awesome. We'd much appreciate it if you're there and you feel compelled. Go ahead and leave us a rating, leave us a review. We always appreciate those of you that are supporting the show and giving us some love on those platforms. We'll also appreciate those of you here with us on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. Continue to stay dialed into that. There's a ton of videos coming out on that page all the time. We're just a small sample of what goes out on that page, but we know when you guys are looking for great content, it's a great destination for you, and we hope that your favorite content on there is always college football. All right, let's go. Let's dive in. Some September superlatives, and we will kick things off with the biggest surprises of 25. All right, biggest surprises here so far in 2025. We will start with the Florida State Seminoles. Now, a lot of people are probably going to look at our list and they're going to lose their mind because they are currently acting as prisoners of the moment. We are looking at this holistically. We're looking at this from a big picture standpoint with where teams we thought were going to be versus where teams currently are. Florida State might top the list with the emphatic victory against Alabama in week 1. And then they go on after that and have a couple more great performances. And while things came up short against Miami, if you were to tell me in the preseason that Florida State and Miami would be on ABC Prime, one of the premier matchups of the weekend, I would have said, I don't know about that. I'm not sure about Florida State. I know about Miami. I was a big fan of theirs. I had them in the top 10 in the preseason. But Florida State, when I put together my preseason top 25, nowhere near that top 25. After the performance of last year. They have a quarterback. They have improved in some areas offensively in ways that I never thought they would have. And I also think while last week might be a blip on the radar, I think that defense is actually still quite good. We'll see. here in time to come. Will they respond adequately to the disappointment last week at the hands of Virginia? We'll find out. But right now, so far, they've been one of the biggest surprises of the season. We'll also go to Maryland, off to a quiet 4-0 start. Gets a lot tougher from here. But the way they're playing on both sides of the ball, I think Maryland's a team that's going to be dangerous. I'm not saying they're going to win the league in the Big Ten. I'm not saying they're going to finish 9-3. I just think it's a dangerous team. And I think their quarterback, Malik Washington, has got a chance to be a really special player. Indiana also has been an outstanding surprise so far this year. I had them at 18 entering the season, but I also kind of thought to myself, there's just no way they're going to be as good as they were last year. They were so good last year. They were so efficient offensively. They were so efficient defensively, and they lost a lot of really good players. They lost multiple defensive tackles, a couple guys in the secondary, lost a few guys along the offensive line, lost a couple running backs, lost their quarterback. I just didn't anticipate them being one of the best teams in college football. And looking at them holistically, I actually think they're better than they were last year. And the win against Illinois got more impressive with Illinois' performance against USC. So Indiana is a team that I've been somewhat surprised by. Like I said, 18 in the preseason, but I would have them firmly in the top 10 so far through the first 5 weeks of the season. Vanderbilt, also another huge surprise. Not because they're in a good spot and that they're competitive, but it's more how they've looked so far. They're one of the most efficient teams in the country on both sides of the ball. Currently sitting there 5-0, big opportunity coming up this weekend to play against Alabama, a team they got last year, to kind of prove that the first 5 games kind of validates where Vandy currently stands. And look, Diego Pavia, their quarterback, we'll talk about him a little later in the show. He's playing at a really high clip. And they appear to be much better in the front seven defensively. And I think they're going to be pretty good throughout the rest of the way. It's not a team that's like hoping to get to bowl eligible. It's a team that's hoping to be a problem for everyone in the SEC, and they might very well be if they continue on this path. Let's go next to Mississippi State. Currently 4-1. That one loss was to an excellent Tennessee team in overtime. I don't think many people in the preseason thought Mississippi State was going to knock off Arizona State, was going to start 4-0, was going to have Tennessee on the ropes there in the opener against SEC teams. I don't think many people anticipated that, but this team is flying around on defense. They're much better on that side of the ball. They're one of the most improved teams in the country through the first 5 weeks. We'll go next to Virginia. Currently sitting there 4-1, huge win under their belt, great offense. Chandler Morris has been outstanding. So Virginia, another team that we did not have high hopes for coming into the season, and yet here they are currently sitting in the AP top 25. As far as the biggest disappointments so far, I have just 3 because I looked at my preseason top 25, and yes, there's a few teams that have underwhelmed, but at the same time, I still think some of those teams could round into shape. The biggest disappointments are probably pretty clear. Probably not going to be that surprised to know that Clemson, to me, has been one of the biggest disappointments of the season. I had them preseason number 1. Totally missed on this one completely. Really did. I look at their quarterback in Cade Klubnik, who I thought was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. It hasn't materialized this year. I thought defensively they'd be able to disrupt the opposing quarterback's timing and rhythm. That hasn't happened as often as I'd hoped. They haven't been very balanced offensively. And I just think kind of across the board, they're just a little out of sorts. Can Clemson get back and end up finishing with a decent record? Perhaps, but they are a far way away from where I thought they'd be coming into the season, knowing the returning production that they had on both sides of the ball. We'll go next to Penn State. You're probably sitting there saying, hang on a second, they have 1 loss. That loss was in overtime to an elite football team. Fair enough. But when I look at Penn State, they look exactly like they looked at times last year. That to me is what's been disappointing, is I have not seen the crazy progress offensively. I have not seen a newfound commitment to creating explosive plays offensively. I have not seen great progress made by Drew Aller, their quarterback. In some areas, I think he's kind of regressed in a couple spots as well. So I think Penn State's still everything in front of them, but I had them number 2 in the preseason. Right now, I wouldn't have them in the top 10. Love their defense. I think they battle. To give up only 17 points in regulation to an explosive offense like Oregon says an awful lot about that group at all 3 levels. I think that's a really good group. However, what's holding Penn State back from national championship candidacy is high-level play offensively and being able to manufacture explosive plays. They couldn't do it last year, and so far, we haven't seen very much to believe that they can do it this year. And then lastly, it's Florida. I had them at number 16 in the preseason. To start the way they've started is really disappointing. And I don't think I had them winning against LSU on the road. Wouldn't have had them winning on the road at Miami. Those two teams I loved, both had them in the top 10 there in the preseason. But losing to USF, and the big issue with Florida is how out of sorts they look offensively. Their identity has been running the football. They haven't been elite running the football. I thought their quarterback, DJ Lagway, was a top 10 quarterback coming into the season. He hasn't played that way, not even close to being able to reaching his potential. Here's hoping they can get things back on track. But right now, the three biggest disappointments in college football so far for me have been Clemson, Penn State, and the Florida Gators. Moving on now to the top 10 defenses in college football. Now, some of this will be statistically driven. Others, little bit eye test. Others, maybe it's level of competition faced. So take all of these rankings knowing that some teams haven't had a chance to bow up against top-tier competition offensively. However, there are some notable omissions from our preseason top 10 in our current version of our top 10. Notre Dame should not come as a huge surprise. They drop out of the top 10. We had them at number 5 in the preseason. I liked some of the progress made last week against Arkansas, by the way. So here's hoping the arrow is pointing up for the Irish, but that side of the ball remains a big concern with how they looked in the first few games. Alabama, I had them at number 6 in the preseason defensively. I think this group could collectively continue to improve. However, did give up a couple gashes in the run game. There's still a couple things that we saw against Florida State that were a little bit problematic. So Alabama moves out of the top 10 on that side of the ball for now. Michigan, I had them at number 8 in the preseason. Now, I think they'd be very, very close, but they're not quite as disruptive up front, especially on the interior as I was hoping. They'd be close to the top 10, but not quite in the top 10 right now. And then Clemson, had them number 10 in the preseason. Right now, they would not be close to being in the top 10 with how they're playing on that side of the ball. Let's start with the 10th best defense that we've seen in college football this year. To me, it's Penn State. I had them number 3 in the preseason. Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator, they've been very, very stingy there in the first few games against the run. This is a tough double overtime loss to Oregon, and I know based off how things went last year, thought that this is one they absolutely had to have. I don't disagree, but I have liked some of the things I've seen from Amari Campbell. I have liked what I've seen from Denai Dennis Sutton, even though he's constantly getting double teamed. I have liked what I've seen at times from Zane Durant, from Zakee Wheatley, from some other guys. So this is a good group collectively across the board. Maybe not top 3 like I expected from them coming into the season, but definitely a top 10 unit from top to bottom. We'll go next to the 9th best defense. That's LSU. They were unranked in the preseason. If we would have done this list last week, LSU's defense led by Blake Baker probably would have been in the top 3 or 4. The first 5 games, they've been pretty good. They're still super aggressive, very effective. However, there did arise a few vulnerabilities with what we saw last week against the Ole Miss Rebels. Some of their aggression was used against them. Now I would anticipate them maybe shoring things up just a little bit on that side. And they did get a little bit exposed on the downfield passing attack opposite Mansour Delane. Their lockdown corner on one side, the other corner did lose a couple one-on-ones last week, but still think as far as top defenses are concerned, that'd be one of the more difficult defenses to play. Plus they force a lot of turnovers as well. So LSU still squarely in the top 10. At number 8, it's the Oregon Ducks. I had them at number 9 in the preseason. Really good, really athletic. This is an opportunistic unit. They're really solid against the pass. And while when you look at some of the statistical profile, maybe not as dominant as some of the elite defenses in college football right now, this is a team that's made critical game-winning plays in the biggest possible moments. If you look at their pass defense in particular, they've been amazing. The only thing that's a slight concern right now against a super dominant offensive line, against a team that can really pound the football, can they stop the run? I think they can. They're still in the top 8 for me, but that is one question where I do maybe feel a little bit uneasy to an extent. So we'll see, like when they get against an Ohio State, for example, will they be able to stop the run as well as they did at times in the first few games of the year? We'll find out. I do, however, feel outstanding about their secondary. It's one of the best I've seen in the country this season. At number 7, it's the Missouri Tigers. They were unranked in the preseason, But their second-year defensive coordinator, Corey Batoon, has done an outstanding job so far. And if you look at their defense, in many categories, they are outstanding. They're one of the tops in total defense, one of the tops in rushing defense, one of the tops in third down defense. They're one of the tops in opponent completion percentage. So you look at some of the numbers, it supports it, but you also look at some of the playmakers that they have. That defensive front, really, really good. And I like their scheme as well. They're a tough team to play against. At number 6, it's Indiana. They were unranked by me in the preseason, but Bryant Haynes, their defensive coordinator, he's been one of the best in college football the last couple of years. Last year, I thought he would have been a worthy recipient of the Broyles Award. That goes to the top assistant coach in college football. The defense is the driving force right now behind the 5-0 start in the top 10 ranking. This is an aggressive group. It is a turnover creating unit. They create a lot of negative plays. They get off the field on third down. You look at their scoring defense, total defense, sack percentage, third down defense, kind of across the board, man. They are really, really solid. Plus, they turn you over. So what they've been able to do in backfilling some of the key departures off last year says an awful lot about that coaching staff's ability to communicate their scheme and just how difficult that scheme is to play against to begin with. Plus, they got a couple All-Americans. Mikhail Kamara at defensive end, D'Angelo Pons at corner. There's a couple of guys that you absolutely want to kind of hang your hat on. They also have a bunch of other really good players as well. We'll go next to number 5. This one might surprise you. This team was unranked in the preseason, but probably shouldn't be that surprised that they were unranked coming into the year. But this has been one of the most remarkable turnarounds in college football this year. That's Texas Tech. They were a massive liability in 2024. And so far, granted, early in the season, it's been one of the more dominant units we've seen this year. The first-year defensive coordinator, Shill Wood, has done a phenomenal job. They're sitting there 4-0. They're undefeated, scoring defense, all these numbers, total defense, rushing defense, all this stuff. Just watch how disruptive they are along the front. And then I think, too, and granted, their toughest matchup to date, the team game against Utah, we know Utah's elite along the offensive line. That's a really good group. Well, Utah was not moving Texas Tech off the ball. That's something you're not often used to seeing. The pass rush was relentless. This is a good group from top to bottom. They are in the top 5 right now of defenses I have watched this season. At number 4, it's the Texas Longhorns. I had them at number 1 in the preseason, still among the best from a stat profile standpoint. Still love their personnel on the high side, and I think their best is yet to come for this group, kind of across the board. You still got Anthony Hill, still got Colin Simmons, still got Michael Taft. Those guys at all 3 levels can take over the game. You also have a solid lockdown corner in Muhammad. Like, you got a lot of really good pieces on that unit. So they are a top 4 defense for sure. It's probably as low as they can be at this point. We'll see what happens here in the month of October when things get a little bit tougher for the Longhorns. At number 3, it's the Miami Hurricanes. They were unranked in the preseason, but their new defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, has done an amazing job. This entire defense runs through its defensive line. And this defensive line is probably the best in the sport. You got Ruben Bain on one side. You got Akeem Mesidor on the other. Ruben Bain has been completely off the charts good here in the first few games of the season. He is probably worthy of getting a little bit of Heisman Trophy buzz. He is constantly a presence in the opponent's backfield. And then, not to be overlooked, Mesidor, who last year had to play a little bit more inside. Now he's back to playing a more natural position on the edge, but you can still win inside. He's got 2.5 sacks. He creates a lot of havoc there on the interior as well. But the big thing for Mario Cristobal this offseason was rebuilding the secondary, not giving up explosive plays, not making mistakes in coverage. They haven't done that. And if you look at what they've added in the portal with Poyser from Jacksonville State, Jacoby Thomas from Tennessee, some of the other pieces that are now there defensively, this group has been really, really impressive. What's more impressive, too, is to see, yes, they get that win, for example, against Notre Dame. They hold Notre Dame to 20-some-odd points, 24 points or whatnot. To see what Notre Dame has done since on that side of the ball says a lot of just about how good this Miami defense is. At number 2, it's the Oklahoma Sooners. We had them at number 7 in the preseason. This group is tremendously, tremendously good at creating pressure. This group, from a front back, front to back is very, very difficult to tackle, man. They are so good. Their pressure packages, their aggressiveness, they're one of the best in third down. They're one of the best against the pass. They're one of the best against the run. There is one area which I'm a little concerned about. They do have a little bit of youth at the cornerback spot. That got exploited a couple times against Auburn. But other than that, man, this group has been outstanding. R. Mason Thomas, Marvin Jones Jr., David Stone, and there's about 3 or 4 others, Halton and a few others, that are creating a lot of problems. That defensive line is one of the best in the sport for good reason. That's why this Oklahoma Sooners team is currently sitting as our second best defense here in 2025. And then at number 1 should not be a massive surprise. We had them at number 2 in the preseason. It's hard when you have a team in Ohio State that was number 2 in the preseason with our defensive projections, and they're actually significantly better than we thought they'd be. That says an awful lot about what their defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, has done. They have not just suffocated opponents, but they have been remarkably good on the most critical moments of the game, especially in the red zone. They are one of the top scoring defenses in the country, giving up just 22 points so far in their 4 games. Their stinginess has been ridiculous. You got Caden Curry, you got Caden McDonald, really disruptive pieces, but they just keep rolling players. It's like the next man up. There's no drop off whatsoever. This group is deep. This group is disruptive. And I think still in the secondary with what Caleb Downs brings, you have a level of leadership and playmaking ability there in the back end that no one else in college football has. I also think they've grown tremendously at the cornerback spot. I've liked so far what I've seen from Igbinosun. Jermaine Matthews has had some good moments as well, especially that interception against Texas. So Ohio State probably shouldn't come as a huge surprise. They are the top defense so far in the first month of the season on college football. All right, moving on to our quarterback rankings. And I must admit, as a guy that watched a million snaps in the offseason, putting quarterback ranking together, our rankings from the preseason were a bona fide disaster. I'm not sure what else to tell you. There's no spinning it. Some of the projections that we tried to make, some of the assessments that we made off last year's tape, they just have not materialized this year. So that's the beauty. You go back to the drawing board, you go back and watch as much as you can here the first month of the season, and you reassess. We had DJ Lagway at number 9 coming in. We had Garrett Nussmeier at number 5 coming in, Drew Aller at 4, Sam Levitt from Arizona State, he was at 3. And then to make matters even more challenging, we had Cade Klubnik at number 1. So as you can tell, I just gave you a nice list of our top 10 guys, none of which are in our top 10 right now. Now, I do want to give some honorable mentions because there's a lot of guys playing good football, and unfortunately, they didn't quite crack the top 10, but they deserve to be mentioned for what they're doing right now for their team. We'll start with Taylon Green. He might be the best weapon in the sport. He's the quarterback from Arkansas. But as you could see last week against Notre Dame, there's still some lapses from an accuracy standpoint that keep him outside the top 10. I want to give a little love to Ethan Kaliakmanis, too, at Rutgers. He's had a really nice season so far. I mean, he's gotten hit a few times, but he's been pretty accurate, and I think has given Rutgers a chance in a few different games. I want to go next to Julian Sayin, probably the most accurate quarterback I've watched this year, and I really like what I've seen. I really, really like what I've seen, and the stats back it up. But if you really watch the level of difficulty on some of the throws that he's been asked to make, some other guys have just been asked to do a little bit more. So Julian Sayin's in a really good spot right now. The arrow for him is absolutely pointing up, but he's not quite in the top 10 just yet because they're kind of asking him to manage the game more so than carry the team at this point. And by the way, that's exactly what I do too, especially with what Ohio State is doing on the defensive side. I want to go next to Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati, who not enough people are paying attention to what this young man is doing. He is playing at a crazy high level right now. Bo Pribula, he from Missouri. The only thing that's keeping him off the top 10 right now is the level of competition. Now, the only game he didn't just completely ball out was against South Carolina, and that's by far the best defense that he's played. So we'll see what happens with him, but I still like very much where he's going and what the upside might be with him. Josh Hoover from TCU. Against SMU, he has a career day. Throws for 380, 5 touchdowns, 35-24 victory against the Ponies. But in the most recent game against Arizona State, tough challenge did have a couple picks. So that kept him, he was going to be in the top 10 prior to that performance. I just couldn't quite put him in after that showing. Also loved what I've seen so far from Thomas Castellanos. The playmaking is there, and the improvements that we've seen from him throwing the football have been tremendous. They've been very, very good. I think he's probably, from last year to this year, maybe the most improved quarterback I've seen so far. He was not near the top 10 at this point in the preseason. Now he's sniffing the top 10 and very close to breaking through. I think he's in a really good spot, and the arrow, hopefully, after last week's disappointment, is pointing up. Chandler Morris from Virginia, also very close. Now, what kept him out of the top 10 were the 3 interceptions he threw last week. He still has a bit of a gunslinger mentality, and I love that they have enabled him. They have told him, hey, man, you just keep throwing it. Keep throwing it. Take those chances. Take those risks. But I don't know if you're going to be able to get away with that all the time. So he's out just because I don't know if I trust him all the time. But if you need a guy to make a play, he's absolutely one of those guys. And then just narrowly missing the top 10 is Haynes King. Haynes King is so close. And if we're going based on intangibles, there's very few guys in the country that have intangibles like Haynes King. He's off the charts. Really, really tough, really physical. But as far as some of the accuracy stuff, still pretty good. As far as a runner, still pretty good. I just think the guys that are currently in the top 10, they might be doing it at a little bit more of a consistent level right now. At number 10, never in a million years did I think this guy was going to be in the top 10 when the season started. It's Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. The guy is just a complete baller, and the arrow is pointing all the way up. The only issue that I can find right now with his performance with these first 3 starts, and he would not have made the list, by the way, if we were just looking at the games against Arkansas and against Tulane. He made the list almost exclusively because of the performance he had against LSU, who I think is a top 10 defense. And he threw for over 300, was really accurate, tremendous on third down, fitting into the tight windows, contributing in the run game. Trinidad Chambliss right now is a top 10 quarterback in the country. And not many people are paying attention just yet. They probably should be, though, because this guy can do anything he wants to do on the football field. And that offense has really empowered him to take chances. And when he has, he's been very accurate. Also, just 1 interception on the year, and that was on a great defensive play. At number 9, it's Carson Beck from Miami. We had him at number 6 in the preseason. I'm surprised a little bit to see that he's fallen a bit. I just think the guys in front of him have maybe done just a touch more. But he's been efficient and surgical at times. Does have a couple picks, but if you look at it, it's probably because he had to move in the pocket, was under duress a couple times as well. But I really like Carson Beck. I think he's comfortable. He looks like he's back playing at a really high level. I think this is about as low as he can probably go right now. I think he'll continue to get better as the season goes along. At number 8, it's Diego Pavia. He did not make our preseason top 10 because I was curious, like, would he be able to back it up? Well, not only has he backed it up, but he's improved in a lot of categories. He's more efficient throwing the football. He's been just as good on the ground. He's rushed for nearly 300 yards this year and a couple scores. Still does have the occasional lapse in decision-making. The interceptions are something to be mindful of. So you got to watch that. But other than that, Diego Pavia has been everything you could possibly want for the Vanderbilt Commodores in their 5-0 start to the season. At number 7, it's CJ Carr, Notre Dame. His standout performance against Arkansas kind of left no doubt, man. It was nearly flawless. 22 of 30, 354, 4 touchdowns, ties a Notre Dame freshman record for touchdown passes in a single game. And even in the losses, if you look at the 2 performances in the losses against Miami, we know how good that Miami team is. He had a couple touchdowns, threw for over 200, added a rushing score, did have a pick, but that was on a deflected pass. He also followed that up with a nearly 300-yard performance against A&M, and I think that's a really good defense as well, especially against quarterbacks and the amount of pressure they can do applied to quarterbacks. So I think CJ Carr firmly in the top 7 right now with how he has performed. At number 6, it's Ty Simpson, Alabama. Super impressive so far, especially in the last 3 games. Very efficient, very smart, One thing of note is that he is impeccable from a ball security standpoint. He's yet to throw an interception this year. His quarterback rating's been very good. He's contributed some on the ground as well. He's got a couple touchdowns on the ground, can keep you honest with his legs. But you watch the level of decisiveness starting with the ULM game to where he's at right now. And I think people will point back to the performance against Florida State. I actually think Ty Simpson in that game battled. And while he didn't quite trust it enough, the adjustments that have been made since that performance have been amazing. The last 3 weeks, there's few people in college football that are playing better and more efficiently than Ty Simpson. The arrow is absolutely pointing up. At number 5 is John Mateer. Had him at number 2 in the country coming into the season. I'm just sick to my stomach that we won't get to watch this young man play football for the next few weeks. Hopefully he can return. But one thing that I've been impressed with is the rushing ability. The rushing ability has been very, very good. It has not skipped a beat from what he did at Washington State. Now, from an accuracy standpoint, there are still occasional lapses. There are still occasional misses. But as far as just willing your team to victory, very few in the country do it better than John Mateer. He lands at number 5. At number 4, it's Jaden Mayava at USC. Statistically, he's been the best quarterback so far. If you look at wins against replacement, other metrics, several metrics in college football have him at number 1. And in the losing effort last week, he did throw for 364 against Illinois, but he looks extremely comfortable. He's got a great supporting cast, and he is delivering a lot of difficult throws on a week-to-week basis, and he doesn't miss many, man. Jaden Mayava is playing at an outrageously high level for the Trojans. They just got to figure things out on defense because that's ultimately what got them last week. At number 3, it's Damon Williams, quarterback, Washington. He was unranked by us in the preseason, but I was keeping a very close eye on him throughout these first few weeks of the season. Now, I think people will look at last week and they'll look at the numbers and then will not watch the tape and they'll say, well, gosh, Ohio State ate his lunch. He was under constant duress in that game. I mean, he very rarely ever had much of a chance. Ohio State's defensive plan was beautiful. It was really, really good, especially in the red zone when things condensed. They also got to him a couple times. He took 6 sacks. That's a hard thing for a quarterback with his level of mobility to have to figure things out. But man, in his best moments, like the performance against Washington State, he was absolutely flawless. Super accurate. He can add a ton with his legs as well. Added 88 yards in that game and a touchdown. Watch him at his best. This guy is a lot like Kyler Murray. And I don't say that lightly. I don't like to compare players to past Heisman Trophy winners. I don't think it's fair. I think Damon Williams is very, very similar to the former Oklahoma Heisman Trophy winner. Their skill set, amazing, which puts into perspective just how good Ohio State's performance was defensively last week. At number 2, it's Fernando Mendoza. He's second right now in touchdown passes behind Sawyer Robertson. Against Illinois, he was ridiculous. 21 of 23, 267, 5 touchdowns. They made him the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. And maybe the toughest test of the season up to this point, he delivered a very gritty 20-15 victory against Iowa. And we all know how good Iowa is on that side of the ball, right? You throw for 233 and a couple touchdowns, a couple very, very significant plays in critical moments. Even after the game, Curt Cignetti saying that guy's as tough as nails kind of speaks to his resilience and what he's going to be capable of as they continue to navigate throughout the schedule. And at number 1, Dante Moore of the Oregon Ducks. Through the 5 games that I've watched this year, he has been one of the most efficient, one of the most poised, one of the most productive quarterbacks I've seen so far this year. The performance on the road against a really good Penn State football team, especially on the defensive side of the football, to go and have that level of efficiency throwing the football, to not turn the ball over at all, to constantly keep plays alive, to keep you honest with his legs, to throw for 250 and 3 touchdowns, including the incredible game winner where he evaded a would-be tackler and delivered an accurate strike. The fact that he's taken just 1 sack this year speaks to where he's at in seeing the field and the comfort level that he's currently playing with. Dante Moore, so far through the first 5 weeks, he's been the best quarterback in college football. Finally, we'll finish things up with our all-transfer team so far for 2025. So it's early. I understand things will change. I understand things will adjust. And just being as honest as I possibly can be, I watch as much college football as I possibly can. I'm sure there's a transfer or two at maybe a G5 school that I haven't seen just yet that needs deserving recognition. But of the guys I've seen that played football at a different place last year, now are thriving at their current home, these are the guys that have stood out the most. At quarterback, it's Fernando Mendoza. He's doing amazing things for the Indiana Hoosiers after transferring over from Cal. At running back, Justice Haynes, who transferred to Michigan from Alabama. He's been tremendous for the Wolverines up to this point. And Ahmad Hardy, he's at Missouri, came up from Louisiana Monroe. It'd be tough. Those might be the two best in the country as far as impact transfers for their respective teams. We'll go next to wide receiver. Mario Craver should not require a ton of explanation. He's been incredible for the Aggies up to this point after transferring over from Mississippi State. And Harrison Wallace from Ole Miss. Trey Wallace, he was at Penn State last year, but has become kind of the go-to guy for the Rebels, and he has been very solid here this first month of the season. At tight end, I'm going with Terrence Carter, who transferred to Texas Tech from Louisiana. He's provided some really big moments for the Red Raider offense. You're going to notice, by the way, there's a bunch of Red Raiders on this list. I've been so infatuated with watching that team play and with some of their new additions this year. At defensive tackle, Skylar Gill-Howard, who is dominating the line of scrimmage for Texas Tech on a week-to-week basis. He came down from NIU. And Khalil Laufau from Houston, who is at Washington State prior to. You just watch him in the middle of that Houston defense, man. He is extremely disruptive. He's wrecking a lot of plays there at or around the line of scrimmage and pushing the pocket and make life difficult for the opposing quarterback. On the edge defensively, David Bailey, who transferred to Texas Tech from Stanford, and Mason Reiger, who's at Wisconsin. He came up from Louisville. A couple other guys that could have made the list there, but those two guys just kind of separated themselves just ever so slightly. Been very impressed with what Bailey and Reiger have done up to this point. At linebacker, going to Amari Campbell, Penn State. He transferred up from North Carolina. Might be a bit of the prisoner of the moment because he was all over the field. It felt like in that game against Oregon. So he has been highly impressive. And then Trey Lathan, he's at Kansas. He transferred over from West Virginia. At safety, A.J. Halsey from LSU. He transferred over from Houston. Man, he has been so good. So instinctive, makes play after play after play all the time. He's always in the correct place. Halsey's been a real treat to watch so far this year. And Lewis Moore, who transferred to Indiana from Ole Miss, he's been outstanding as well. And then at corner, Mansour Delane, he's the Louisiana State corner, LSU from Virginia Tech. I'm not sure there's been a better transfer player outside of maybe Fernando Mendoza and the two running backs I referenced than Mansour Delane. He has been unbelievable, locking down one side of the field for the Bayou Bengals defense. People don't even try to throw in his direction. I don't really blame him either. He's been that good. And then Keontae Scott, who's kind of playing more the nickel for Miami, but he transferred from Auburn. He's been very, very good there as kind of the slot corner for the Hurricanes so far this season. So there's your all-transfer team. I'm sure it'll change a lot here in the next month and then finally in the last month. But, man, those guys are making a big impact for their new team so far here in the month of September. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. We appreciate all of you guys that have subscribed to the podcast, that are following the podcast, and those of you that are joining us via the ESPN College Football YouTube page. Thank you guys so much. We always appreciate you, and we look forward to being back on Thursday for our updated previews for the week 6, of college football. So for all of us here at ACF, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, intern Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an awesome day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.